Hello. Hello. Welcome back. Welcome to the Business of Happiness podcast. I'm your host again, Dr. Tarryn MacCarthy, and today is going to be such a good day. You are in for such a treat for this episode. If you're listening to this episode, make yourself comfortable, pull up a cup of tea because we are meeting a phenomenal, beautiful friend of mine who I cannot wait to introduce you to. She has written an incredible book that you have got to put your hands on. And today she's going to tell us all about it. I'm introducing you today to my very good friend, Liz Svatek. And for those of you who don't know Liz, she is a transformational coach, one of the best out there. And I say so from personal experience. She is amazing. And also a podcast host, a speaker, a healer who empowers women to reinvent themselves. So, as you're listening to this episode, I ask you to consider if this has been speaking to you, if needing to reinvent yourself, heal yourself is something that you've been really leaning into recently, because then this episode is going to absolutely be for you. She talks about reclaiming your voice after having been silenced and really living out your legacy, which who here doesn't want to do that? I know that's why so many of us are doing the work that we do. This incredible book that I am absolutely loving and I cannot put down is going to be so impactful to you. And the book we're talking about today is called Finding Your Diamonds, Heal the Girl and the Warrior Appears. And with that, I would like to welcome the warrior woman herself, Liz Svatek. Hello and welcome to the Business of Happiness, Liz.
I mean, my face hurts from smiling.
As it should on the Business of Happiness. Hello.
Right.
I have been dying to have you on the show. I am so excited you're here.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. And I'm so excited to have this conversation because these are the conversations that we have all the time, you and me.
I know, we're so lucky. And that's exactly why I thought this would be such a great fit for my audience, because the women who are listening to this podcast care about the things you and I care about. And for those of you who are paying attention here on this episode, Liz, although she's not a dentist, every moment in the book, I felt like, oh my gosh, she's speaking to me. And I just think that so much of your lived experience, Liz, is shared by the women who listen to this podcast. And I'll let you explain a little bit more about that, but it is incredible. And I just want to say thank you for sharing this beautiful story so vulnerably and so openly and so honestly, and really providing so much hope on the other side of this. So thank you for pouring your soul into this beautiful book.
Well, thank you for acknowledging me. I feel like I'm a hope dealer and I deal in hope. That's what I do. I'm a hope dealer.
Well, it absolutely speaks for itself. So I'd love for you to, I'm actually going to start at the very beginning of your book. And there's this beautiful moment that you speak about, a breaking point at your 49th birthday. And really, I think this was the part that struck me. Women need to hear this story because we have, I think so many of us have experienced moments like that in our 40s, at a point in our lives where we've created and established and built and birthed so much. And we get to this place where we reach a breaking point. And I think so many of us can feel so alone in that. And I'd love for you to share just a little bit, if you can, a little spoiler alert from the book about reaching your breaking point at your 49th birthday.
Yeah. And I think, for all of us, the breaking point is a million little breaking points before the big breaking point, right? Like, I mean, there were many other times before this that I had shoved it down, pushed it away, didn't want to deal with it, didn't want to acknowledge it really fully, even though I was having these feelings that were just piling up. And then it finally got to that point, 49th birthday. I was watching all these women come into 50, like hiding, slinking in, like, and I thought, what is it? Like, they didn't want to be celebrated. They didn't want to do anything. And I thought, what is this? There was so much shame and regret. And like, I haven't done enough. I haven't done anything. Like, who am I? Like, where have I been? And I thought, oh my God, I don't want to come in to 50 like that. And so I committed myself to making some really big changes. But I think the breaking point was literally like, I can no longer fake it. Like, I can't fake it anymore. I can't be this person that people think I am, right? I can't be this mother, this wife, this working woman that everyone thinks I am that has it all together because I this can't be it. There's got to be more for me. This cannot be my life. I really had that feeling. And it scared me because I just didn't know what would have to change. I thought, my God, am I going to have to leave my husband? Am I going to have to move away? Am I going to have to quit everything I'm doing? Like, I didn't know what was going to happen, but I knew I couldn't take one step further in the current identity that I was living in.
See, and I think that's the part that resonated so strongly with me is when you've been living a certain identity for decades. And that realization, when you wake up and realize, oh my gosh, the schism between who I'm performing as
Yep.
on a daily basis and who I am underneath, who maybe I'm not even familiar with right now because I've been hiding from her for so long,
Yes.
feels like the Grand Canyon, the difference between those two personas. And that is terrifying.
Yeah, I liken it to when you're on the trapeze bar, it's scary enough as it is. But when they're like, just jump over to that other bar, just like, ju-
Mm,
just turn away from this bar that you're holding on to for dear life with your white knuckles and just jump through the air to this other unknown place, right? That's
mhm,
how I felt. Like, how can I let go of this identity? Because I
mm,
don't know what I'm leaping over to. I don't even know what this looks like. And I realized I had to have patience and time and kind of go fearlessly, frankly, onto this into this leaping in this new territory. And that ended up being the most beautiful journey. But what's most terrifying is just beginning that journey, right? Like,
yeah,
I don't know what this is, but I know what it's not.
yeah,
It's not this.
yeah.
It's not my current life.
And, I think you just nailed it as well. It's the awareness is the first step. And then you talk about in your book how the awareness is beautiful and brilliant and scary enough as it is,
Yes.
but it's not everything because there needs to be a commitment on the other side of the awareness.
Yes.
What did commitment look like to you in those early days? What did when that path wasn't clear, when you still hadn't quite figured out who she is, this woman who is Liz without the persona, without the performance? What did commitment look like in those early days? Committing to the shift.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the early days, it meant stopping so many
Mm.
things, getting off the social calendar. Like, I was just too busy. I was
Yeah.
too busy because I was terrified because I didn't. If I thought if I stopped, if I stood still for 3 seconds, I would feel all these feelings. I would have all these thoughts. So I would keep myself really, really busy. So it
Mm,
was stopping.
mm,
Like, I took a pause in my work. I took a pause off the social calendar. I stopped everything. And when I did, there were some things that really, really came to light. One of them being my relationship with my sister, which I go through in the book as an example to people of the ultimate boundary setting. It was a relationship that had been so hard on me for 40 plus years. And I just refused to let it go because of what I thought it meant about me.
mm,
And so one of the first, things that I had to really look at was that relationship. I had to look at that and I had to say one of the reasons why I felt like I couldn't be myself or I couldn't be who I really was inside is because I had this sister that every time I was acting like my quote unquote self, she didn't like that woman. She
mm,
didn't like her. She didn't like her. And it threatened her. And truthfully, in retrospect, we were threatening each other, right? Like, and you'll read about this story in this book of how, from childhood, we didn't have a chance. We were always competing for the very scarce resources in my family of love and to be seen and to be heard. And so that relationship needed to change and it needed to shift and it eventually needed to just stop altogether. So that was another thing that needed to stop, frankly, so that I could actually get a look around, like stop and look around at my life and say, wait a minute, right? Whose life is this?
mm,
Who am I living for? right? Who cares what anybody else thinks it looks like if it feels like shit on the inside? It has to feel good to me. So I had to kind of take a pause on her as well. So it was taking that pause, sitting in my shit, literally, and looking at myself. And that was the commitment I had to make. And up until then, and you and I have talked about committed versus interested,
Mm.
I think I was interested in change for many years, very interested. I read the books, listened to the podcast, did a few Mel Robbins worksheets, until it really brought me to my knees that I needed to change. I couldn't go one more step. And then I had to commit. I couldn't just say, you know what, it's Monday. I don't feel like doing this today. Right. I had to say, no, I'm committed. Whether I feel like it or not, I will be doing this work. I will be committed to getting off the grid and calming down and slowing down so I can figure out exactly what my next move is.
And I love that story that you shared about your sister because it does bring to light one of the limitations that our minds want to fight for when it comes to establishing those boundaries. And by the way, I love that you likened boundary setting to reclaiming your power, which, hello, that's exactly what it is. But, we tell ourselves, well, she's my sister. I have to be in relationship with her. Like we create these stories that feel so true to ourselves without honoring what is true for ourselves. They really are stories that we've taken on or limitations that we fight for. So I just really applaud you for bringing that truth to us from your story and permission to see even those relationships that are family, that we can evaluate them and reconsider, is this really healthy for me? Is this really in my highest service?
Yeah. And I think those are the hardest boundaries to set.
Absolutely.
But I've had, you have a early copy of this book. It's obviously going to be on Amazon for everyone when you're listening to this right now. But I had a couple people read early copies of this book, and the one thing that people keep telling me is, "Thank you for telling this story of being no longer connected to your sister." There are so many people who are
Mm,
suffering in relationships with their fathers, their mothers, their
mm,
sisters, their brothers, and there's so much shame they have about possibly letting it go or limiting it very, very severely. And they feel a guilt and a shame about that. And I felt that for 40 something years. And the permission to let that go, the
mm,
permission to choose myself, I reclaimed my power on a level like on a little girl level.
mm,
The power that I felt as a child, where I felt like the moon was following me and I knew
mm,
I was special, and all those feelings I had about myself came
mm,
back to me when I took that space. When I removed my sister from my life, I finally started feeling those feelings of love for myself again, because all the time, every time I let her back in, every time I got it back into my little hope cycle of the abuse of saying, no, I think it could work. Maybe it'll work this time. Once I let that go, those boundaries, I showed myself how much I love myself, because boundaries are love. And when
mm.
I showed myself, no, I'm choosing me, I gained that trust back with myself. I couldn't trust myself anymore because everything I said I would do, I would go against, right?
Mm.
Every time I would let her back. So when I really stood up for myself and really set that boundary, I finally had that trust back. And then here comes all that power and love, all
Mm.
the things that I was searching for outside myself came flooding back from the inside out.
Wow. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And I just want to acknowledge the other component that you mentioned of just needing to slow down to be able to access all of this. You wrote at one point, I stayed busy, but at night, when everything was quiet, that voice whispered, is this really it? And I think sometimes we want to push that little voice down by distraction or, busying ourselves. And that can also silence who we are, suppress who we are, and so the relationships absolutely, but even how much we're in control of our own just by giving ourselves permission to slow down. And I know that every woman listening to this is challenged with this because
Yes.
just like you and I, high achieving, driven, beautiful women who are here to serve others, slowing down can feel like you want to crawl out of your skin. It can feel so enormously uncomfortable. So, I wonder if you can offer, and you do in your book so beautifully, but I wonder if you can offer suggestion that something that someone might receive when they read this book of how to recognize when they're living on this autopilot, as you mentioned, and what a step out of that might be.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I think, like you're saying, the universal. I'm
I
speaking
know.
everybody's language. When I say I wrote this book, my story is your story. I'm dead serious.
Yeah.
I think the slowing down of me. I mean, it's not that I couldn't see it because the signals were there, right? But I refused to do it. One of the biggest signals of my lack of slowing down was resentment. I was
Mm.
so resentful of my kids, my husband, anything I could blame outside of myself.
Yeah,
Because when you have no time, when you are not pouring into yourself, your resentment will build and build and build.
absolutely.
And so if you notice yourself feeling super resentful of your boss, your kids, your husband, your partner, whoever it is, that is a red flag. It is a smoke alarm going off in your house. And the call is always coming from inside the house.
Mhm.
So you got to notice that, right? Notice that resentment. I was also having high blood pressure, Dr. Taryn. My blood pressure, started skyrocketing. So, in terms of my sister, I had this persistent stomach ache. I had physical symptoms where my body was screaming,
Yeah.
slow down. You are killing us, right? So, I had physical symptoms. I had resentment that was building and building, building. And then that voice that said, this can't be it.
Mm.
This can't be. There's got to be more for you. I thought that voice was a voice of kind of shame and guilt and not enoughness.
And selfishness,
And
right? Like, that's what we tell
selfish.
ourselves.
Exactly. Be
Yeah.
grateful. Be
Mhm.
grateful, Liz. You have a nice husband. You have a nice
Mhm.
house. You have a good job. That's the gratitude trap. And I write about this in the book.
Yeah, you
If
do.
you are using gratitude as a prison of shame and guilt on yourself, girl, that is not gratitude.
Mhm.
And our friends are not helpful with this. If I say to my friends, I would say, God, I just feel like there's more. And that they'd be like, but your life is amazing. So then,
Mhm.
right? No one would say, well, that's so interesting. That's interesting. You should maybe look at that. Nobody said that to me. So I was in this
Mhm.
gratitude trap, right? Where I just felt like I had to be grateful. I couldn't want more. But that wanting more, that is everything. That's your legacy calling. That's legacy calling to you and saying, yes, girl, because if you think there's more, well, then guess what, queen? There is. There
Yeah.
is more. You are not wrong. So I want everyone to know if you're hearing that voice, that is the beginning of everything. That is your legacy calling. That is a sign that there is more for you.
Yeah, and you said so beautifully in the book that you were living a lie and you needed to out yourself. That bypassing that you were doing, that gratitude bypassing, the gratitude trap, that takes immense courage. That takes a lot of courage to have that honesty with yourself and to be honest with yourself that that voice keeps calling, that that intuitive knowing inside of you needs to be heard. So, what does that radical honesty look like in your life now?
I think what it looks like now is even in the midst of everything that's going on, right? So I have a son. We both have beautiful, oh my God, Taryn's children. I just wanted to take 1 second. Taryn's children are the most amazing children in the whole wide world.
Right back at you, sister. Right
I,
back at you.
I mean, I thought I loved you. Then I meet these children and husband, and now I'm in love with your whole entire life. I'm in love with your entire life. But both of our sons, Taryn and I, are graduating. Mine just graduated this week,
I
right?
know. Congratulations, Landon.
Congratulations, Landon. And so, even with graduating this week, family in town, here's my book launching at the
Yeah.
same time, right? The radical honesty there is this is grateful abundance. Like every time I want to go into overwhelm, every time I want to make everything hard for myself, I always choose to stay a little bit light and free and say, you know what? This is abundance. My God, I have a book. I wrote a book. I'm an author. This has been a dream of mine for years and years. I've been writing since I was 4 and 5 years old. I've had a journal since I was 4 and 5 years old. I have literally 50 journals in a pile that I use to help me really, tell the truth of this book. And I think that's the radical honesty I have to have for myself. Some things aren't going to get done perfectly. Some days I don't do all the things that I need to do because I can't. Sometimes I do have to just stop everything and just say, I'm going to rest right now. It's just really being in that awareness that there is no rules here, right? I always love
Mm,
to ask myself this question, Taryn, and this is my favorite question. What if nothing's urgent? And that
yeah.
just sends a calm down my entire body, because that is the truth. Nothing is actually urgent.
Nothing is urgent.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing. And so when you are or you say to yourself, what would freedom do?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, freedom would give zero fucks about this and would just absolutely drop everything they're doing right now and go outside and sit in the grass. So that's how I bring in radical honesty. I take some of these words that I love: freedom, limitless. What would it feel like right now to be limitless? Well, I would go outside and jump in my pool naked and swim around in the cold pool, right? Like whatever that answer is, I
Mm,
really listen to that and I listen to my intuition. I really let my intuition guide, the majority, really 99% of my life is just fueled by intuition. Whereas before, I was afraid of my intuition. It scared me to death. I didn't trust it, right? So I think that's how I keep that radical honesty, is I listen to that gut response. Like, what does my, like, even if its response seems so opposite, like, oh, it's a beautiful dinner with all your girlfriends and everybody's going, and I don't want to go. Oh my God, I don't want to go. And you know what? I'm not going. I'm not going to go. So it's things like that I would have never done before because I was so obligated.
yeah.
I put anyone before myself, the dogs, my husband, a friend I barely knew. It didn't matter. Now I really truly do put myself first.
Yeah, and I think that also just speaks to how our culture contributes to women feeling invisible by putting on those expectations of having them need to be in service of others and not listen to that intuitive voice. Or we tell ourselves, I've been married to this man for 20 years. I should stay with him. I should be so grateful. If inside of you, you're screaming, this is no longer the man I want to be with, the cultural expectations that we buy into keep us suppressed.
1000%. 1000%. And I think that's such a good point. Because if your intuition is saying, for example, like you said, this partner is no longer aligned, then what you will do is you will spend another 3 years and you will arrive at the same destination. But you
Mm,
will arrive there more depleted,
yeah.
exhausted, angry, and possibly burn your whole relationship down.
Yeah.
Versus if you listen to that and be curious about it, right? Like, oh, wow, I'm really feeling this kind of not great feeling to my partner. In the curiosity space, maybe there is something that you can do to make it better,
Yeah.
right?
Mm, yeah.
Versus when you're suppressing and suppressing and suppressing, I feel like it's the car accident. Like you hit the wall and it's just devastation
Yeah.
versus
And
like kind of like a gentle release. Like, wow, I talked to my partner about this. We worked it all through. And you know what? We know what we came to. We do need to separate.
yeah.
What do you
And
want to do? The car
it's that
accident?
curiosity space that is the power.
Yes.
That's where your power lies.
Yes. I mean, and curiosity without any, obviously, because there cannot be judgment and curiosity. But that curiosity alone, it breeds this kind of like, it's like almost like a little shield to the shame and the judgment because you're just being curious. Like, wow, why? That's so interesting. I'm feeling this way about my
Mm,
partner. Let me explore that. I'm not going to bring it to him right now. I'm going to explore it in myself first and see, like, what is this really about? Is this about that I'm not taking care of me and I'm
mhm.
resentful? Is this about that he's doing all the things in his life and I'm feeling jealous because
Mm.
I'm not giving that to me? Like, it allows that little space to be like, okay, what is this? Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So cool. And You know, it reminds me of another one of my favorite lines in your book was something to the and please, I'm gonna misquote it, I'm just remembering it right now, is, "I didn't want" when you had this realization of, "I didn't want more stuff, I wanted more me." You know, and sometimes I think we even do that with relationships. Like, I actually don't want anything more from him, I want more from me for me. You know, that same realization, I think that we've been so disconnected from our own selves, and I think that's one of the most beautiful parts of your book was the power we have to reparent ourselves in that beautiful way as you did with your little girl. And I'd love for you to just speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, and you know what? This is, for all the people who are just eye rolling when we're talking about inner child work right now, I hear you. I think inner child work has been around for 107 years. It's been around. I think the difference in the way that I'm using it for myself and for my clients is I'm really making it active. I bring it in not just one and done, but like actively into my life. I have a
Yeah.
connection with that little girl.
Yes.
And I think that is one of the biggest things that women are missing right now. I think, like I said before, all my power, my love for myself, my curiosity, my joy, my playfulness, all those things, sadness, anger. She was the key to all of those things,
Mm,
to helping me feel those things again. And when we're not connected to that little girl inside, there is a distrust we have with ourselves. We feel like we have to make decisions by committee. We can't feel our intuition anymore. We feel numb, right?
yeah.
So when you get her back, she is like a little divining rod. You check in with her. How is she doing? Right? And she tells you, she's the truth teller. She'll tell you it all. And so I put a meditation in the book. It's a free meditation, a little girl meditation to just help us like kind of get started. And if you've even done this work, you're going to love it because it's just very easy and freeing and just a moment that you can have with your little girl. I even include Taryn, and you haven't gotten to this yet, but it's amazing. There is a conversation I have with my little girl in there.
Oh, I
And
love
I
it.
put it in word for word, like what she tells me about what she thought before I did this work, what she thought of the way I was minimizing what had
Mm,
happened to her. Because when I first started talking about some of the abuse that I had suffered as a child, I laughed about it. I blew it off because I didn't want anyone to think that I was in that kind of household. I wanted people to think it looked how it looked on the outside. I didn't want people to know. And so I would just kind of be like, "Oh, well, I was a rebel and my dad this and that." I really didn't do it. And when there was a time where she confronted me and she showed me exactly what it felt like to be her in that situation. And boy, did I never minimize that ever, ever again. And so I asked her about that, what it's been like to kind of get her trust back, reconnect with her. And it's been incredible. And I think this is, again, like you were mentioning, this is one of the keys and the key to your power, right? The key to so much that I think we've overlooked. And I want so many women to experience this. I want like millions of women to experience this, even if they just hear that little meditation and do that little 15-minute thing. It's gonna heal a part of them they didn't know that even existed.
oh, so beautiful. So beautiful. I'm so grateful to you for bringing this beautiful work that you herald. And it really is so powerful. I've been a witness to your journey and to your little girl becoming more and more vocal and you loving and being in relationship with her in a more intentional way consistently. Not just, I think so many of us go through healing programs or coaching programs and you experience the appreciation and the joy after or the transformation during the course and then you move on to the next thing and then you keep searching and you keep falling back into old habit patterns, but what you're offering in this book is a continued forever relationship and a continued forever opportunity to keep healing and listening and really paying attention. And I think so many women, as you mentioned, are searching for that knowing. I just don't know what the next step. I just don't know what I really want. I just don't know how I really feel. And having this relationship with your little girl in the way that you do it in the book is such a gift and something that so many women can understand. We know what that feels like to relate to children, to relate to that nurturing, that loving component. I think this is just such a beautiful way to access that knowledge and that love, that self-love.
Absolutely. And the first part of this book, I go deep into what is the process of healing yourself. I give you examples, I give you exercises to do, the meditation. The second half of the book is really about legacy, because once you kind of engage in that level of healing, you start to connect with that little girl, you start to realize what your legacy actually is. And
Yeah.
I explain like that your legacy is, it's not something that you leave behind. It's something you're actively living every single day. I always say, live your legacy now, live it now. And I think so many women come to me, and the first thing they say is, I don't know what to do next. But I always know I can't get to that next until I help them heal, reconnect with that little girl, kind of find those diamonds of wisdom in their past. And then we can do that beautiful legacy work.
Amazing. Okay. So for those women who are listening who are now totally intrigued and they're like, I got to get my hands on this book, where can we find it? How can we find it? And how can we connect with you?
Yes. So it's on Amazon. Uh,
Woohoo!
yes.
You are an author on Amazon, baby.
What is even happening? I can't even take it.
I know.
Little girl me right now is freaking out.
I love
The
it.
girl that had the Donnie and Marie microphone, who was giving like speaking gigs to her stuffed animals, is losing her mind over this Amazon thing. Let me just say, losing her mind. So yes, it's on Amazon. Finding Your Diamonds, Heal the Girl and the Warrior Appears by Liz Svatek. And then, you can go to lizswatek.com and you can look at all of my things. But you know what I'm going to do also, Tarryn? I have a beautiful walking meditation, just because I went kicking and screaming into meditation. I was not a person that wanted to sit still. So I have a beautiful walking meditation. So not only do you get the book and you get this little girl meditation when you buy the book for free, but I'm going to give you my free walking meditation for your listeners, your special listeners, Tara.
Oh, that'd be awesome. We'll definitely put those in the show notes. I'll make sure the links to the book and the walk-in meditation. Thank you for that, Liz. That's very generous of you. I love that. That's such a gift.
Love you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, my friend. Thank you for being here. Thank you for having the courage to face all those beautiful, brutal components in your past, and for having the courage to step into your legacy and for living it on a daily basis. And then for sharing it with the rest of us and really showing us what it looks like to pay attention to that voice, and then what it looks like to move through and live in that radical honesty with yourself. So I appreciate you.
Well, thank you for having me on. Anybody who's written a book knows it is like a birth, like you're right. I know you're writing your book right now. It is like giving birth. So, it does, it feels very vulnerable. It feels a little scary. It feels a little exciting, all the things. But I really appreciate you having this conversation with me. And because these, again, are the conversations I value the most, the ones you and I have. So thank you for allowing us to do it publicly on your podcast.
I love it. I love it. And to all of you for joining us. Now you've met her, one of the most wonderful women in my life. So I'm so excited to share this beautiful woman with you, Liz Svatek. And I really encourage you to put your hands on this book, because it really is a beautiful guide to how to reclaiming your joy and aliveness and your legacy. And with that, I'll remind you, when you feel good, that's when you can do good. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the Business of Happiness podcast. If this episode brought you new perspective and value, I invite you to subscribe so that you catch all upcoming episodes, and leave us a review. And if you know of a friend or colleague who could benefit from this perspective, share this episode with them and empower their day. For more information about the Business of Happiness and the Radical Happiness for Practitioners course, find me on www.thebizofhappiness.com. See you there.